2,000 years ago, the Colosseum was the beating heart of the Roman Empire, a marvel of engineering and ambition. Its towering arches and grand arena stood as a symbol of Rome's eternal power. Built to host the bloody spectacles that thrilled emperors and terrified slaves, the amphitheater could hold more than 50,000 people, its stone walls echoing with the roar of crowds and the clash of steel. But history, no matter how grand, is fragile. The Colosseum has not always looked as it does today, a broken giant, half its walls missing, its once perfect symmetry forever lost. To understand what happened, we must journey back to a day when the earth itself turned against Rome. It was the year 1349. The city was already weakened. Famine, plague, and political unrest had eroded its strength. Then, without warning, the ground began to shake. Witnesses would later describe the sound as a thunder that came from beneath their feet. The southern side of the Colosseum, a masterpiece of marble and limestone, groaned like a living creature before collapsing in a storm of stone and dust. Massive slabs of travertine broke loose, crushing streets below. Clouds of white debris rolled across the forum, blotting out the sun. People screamed and ran through the chaos, their prayers drowned by the roar of falling stone. In that single moment, the perfect oval of the Colosseum was shattered. The arena, once an indestructible monument, became a wounded relic. But nature was not the only force that conspired against it. In the centuries that followed, the ruins became a quarry for Rome itself. Noble families, churches, and builders stripped the Colosseum of its finest marble and iron clamps, using its bones to create palaces and cathedrals. Piece by piece, the giant was dismantled by the very city it once glorified. The Colosseum survived, but not unchanged. What we see today, the missing half, the open scars, the weathered walls, is the result of centuries of destruction, both natural and human. And yet, even in ruin, it continues to dominate the skyline of Rome, whispering the secrets of a forgotten empire. The collapse of 1349 was only the beginning. The Colosseum, once invincible, had become a wounded beast, and Rome, angry, chaotic, and ever-changing, turned on its fallen giant. In the years that followed the earthquake, the southern wall lay in ruins, its great marble blocks scattered like the bones of a dead god. But rather than mourn its loss, the city saw opportunity. Noble families and papal architects began to strip the amphitheater of its treasures. Thousands of tons of travertine were carted away to build new monuments. The Palazzo Venezia, the Cancelleria, and even parts of St. Peter Basilica rose from the Colosseum's stolen flesh. What the earthquake had broken, men consumed. By the 15th century, the Colosseum had become a living quarry. War crews climbed over its shattered tiers, prying iron clamps from the walls, melting them down for weapons and tools. Entire columns were hauled away under papal orders, their polished marble reborn as altars in grand churches. To the people of medieval Rome, the amphitheater was not a sacred relic, but a resource, an endless reservoir of wealth. And yet, amid this dismantling, strange legends began to spread. Whispers filled the streets that the Colosseum was cursed. Locals spoke of ghostly gladiators wandering the arches at night, their chains clinking softly in the darkness. Others swore they saw torches moving deep inside the locked corridors, shadows of priests performing forbidden rites. Some avoided the ruins entirely, fearing the restless spirits of those who had died there, but still the pillaging continued. Rome was rebuilding itself, and the Colosseum was the perfect sacrifice. By the dawn of the Renaissance, nearly half of the southern structure was gone, leaving the open scar we see today. The Colosseum, once a crown jewel of the empire, had been hollowed out by its own descendants. Its stones became the foundations of palaces, its arches reborn in cathedrals. And yet, Even stripped of its glory, the Colosseum endured. Its battered silhouette became a silent witness to the passing centuries, a monument not only to Rome's power, but to its greed. By the 16th century, the Colosseum was no longer the proud amphitheater of emperors. It had become a scar on the face of Rome, a fractured monument looming over the city like a ghost of the empire. But even as its walls crumbled, new stories began to grow among its ruins. Locals whispered that the Colosseum was alive. They claimed to hear muffled chants late at night echoing through its hollow arches. Torches were seen flickering deep in the corridors, and strange figures in hooded robes slipped through the shadows, carrying objects wrapped in silk and gold. Some believed that ancient cults, thought to have vanished with the empire, had returned, using the ruins for forbidden rites. Others insisted the spirits of dead gladiators haunted the arena, cursed to fight eternal battles beneath the silent moon. Records from the Vatican hint at a troubling truth. Papal officials documented secret gatherings beneath the Colosseum, where mystics, scholars, and exiled nobles met to summon visions of Rome's past glory. They sought omens, blessings, and forbidden knowledge, reading from manuscripts said to predate the empire itself. One tale speaks of a hidden chamber, sealed for centuries beneath the arena's foundations, filled with relics taken from the temple of Jupiter. According to rumor, the chamber was unearthed after the earthquake, and its treasures secretly removed under cover of darkness. No one knows where they went, or if they were ever real. By day, the Colosseum remained a bustling quarry, its stones still feeding the construction of Renaissance Rome. But by night, it belonged to whispers and shadows. To many, it was cursed ground, a place where the living and the dead walked side by side. And yet, despite the legends and the fear, no one could stay away. Artists painted it, poets praised it, and travelers from distant lands marveled at its tragic beauty. The Colosseum, even in ruin, still held a power over the imagination, an untamed monument where history and myth became one. By the dawn of the 18th century, the Colosseum was little more than a skeleton of its former self. The southern wall lay in ruins, entire tiers of stone were missing, and vegetation had begun to reclaim the ancient arena. Travellers described wildflowers growing from its arches and small trees sprouting where gladiators once fought. But nature wasn't finished with Rome's giants. In 1703, disaster struck again. A violent earthquake shook the city, tearing more stone from the weakened amphitheatre. Great blocks of travertine crashed to the ground, leaving fresh scars on the already broken monument. Witnesses wrote that the dust hung in the air for days, and priests claimed the rumble was a divine warning, a reminder of the empire's mortality. Rome, however, was changing. For centuries, the Colosseum had been plundered without mercy, its stones carved into palaces and churches. But by the mid-18th century, attitudes began to shift. Pope Benedict XIV declared the Colosseum a sacred site, dedicating it to the memory of Christian martyrs who, according to tradition, had died in the arena. Crosses were erected, pilgrims came to pray. For the first time in centuries, the Colosseum was seen not as a quarry, but as a relic to be preserved. Yet saving it was no simple task. Another devastating earthquake struck in 1806, shaking loose even more of the outer walls. Cracks deepened, arches collapsed, and large sections of the structure seemed on the verge of total destruction. Engineers scrambled to stabilize the ruins, reinforcing the northern wall with massive brick buttresses that remain today, scars of a desperate attempt to hold history together. During this time, the Colosseum became a paradox, half temple, half ruin. By day, pilgrims prayed at its improvised altars. By night, artists sketched its silhouette beneath the pale Roman moon, captivated by its haunting beauty. Travelers from across Europe described standing inside the empty arena and feeling an almost supernatural weight, as if the ghosts of Rome's past still lingered, trapped within the stone. And yet the Colosseum endured. Even as fire, earthquakes, and human hands conspired to erase it, the amphitheatre refused to vanish. It stood, battered, scarred, but unbroken, a reminder that some giants never truly fall. By the 19th century, the Colosseum had become something more than ruins. It was no longer just a relic of Rome's imperial glory, nor merely a silent witness to centuries of chaos. It had transformed into a symbol, one that spoke to the fragility of power and the endurance of history itself. As Europe romanticized the ancient world, the Colosseum captured the imagination of poets, painters, and travelers alike. Lord Byron stood beneath its arches and wrote of a monument of departed power. Artists filled canvases with its fractured silhouette, using light and shadow to portray not destruction but survival. The amphitheatre, though broken, became eternal. By this time, half of the original structure was gone. The southern wall, once a towering masterpiece of engineering, had vanished, its stones scattered across Renaissance palaces and churches. And yet, what remained carried an aura of quiet defiance. Against earthquakes, fires, wars, and time itself, the Colosseum still stood. In the early 20th century, the Italian government began restoring parts of the monument, determined to preserve what was left. Archaeologists unearthed hidden chambers beneath the arena, revealing trapdoors, animal cages, and tunnels that had once made the spectacles possible. Step by step, the Colosseum surrendered its secrets. Today, it is one of the most visited landmarks in the world. A living paradox, half ruin, half miracle. A silent reminder that empires rise, crumble, and fade, yet their shadows endure. Millions walk through its gates each year, standing where gladiators once awaited their fate and imagining the roar of 50,000 voices filling the air. And still questions linger. What was lost when half the Colosseum fell? What treasures disappeared into private collections or crumbled into dust? How many stories remain buried beneath its foundations, waiting to be uncovered? The Colosseum is no longer whole, but in its scars lies its true power, a testament not to Rome's perfection, but to its survival. It reminds us that time may take, but it never erases. 2000 years later, the Colosseum still commands silence, still inspires awe, and still whispers the same eternal truth. Even giants fall.